Hi everyone and welcome to Mustard Bikes. My name's Mark and at the moment we're looking at the beautiful Honda CBR1000RR-R SP. We've been given exclusive access to this motorcycle by Horizon Motorcycles here in Tasmania and we've just finished fitting one of our Fender Eliminators to it. We've recorded the whole process from start to finish so we can show you how it's done. Like any project though, we're going to need to get some tools. Let's get started. You're going to need a small flat blade screwdriver, a pair of side cutters, a 5 and a 4mm Allen key, as well as an 8 and a 10mm spanner, and if you have access to a telescopic magnet, it's going to make your life a lot easier. In the kit, you'll find the Fender Eliminator with the LED bolt pre-fitted, the base plate, as well as a bag with a number of nuts, bolts and spacers in it. To start, we're going to use the key to remove the pillion seat, and along with that, the toolkit. Now we can undo the wiring that goes to the rear fender. This first plug here we can undo by pushing on the little latch on the top and then pulling it out. There's more wires underneath the latch that we're showing you here. There's a little block which we need to lift up off a tab and then pull out from underneath the seat. This gives us access to this little junction box and the two plugs shown here. We can now take that short flat blade screwdriver that we discussed earlier to pull out the two plugs by lifting the tabs on the top of them. With both the plugs removed, we've now completely disconnected the stock fender from the bike. Next we need to crack loose the 4 bolts here. To do this we're going to use the 8 and 10mm spanners. We can now completely remove the bolts by hand. If you've got the magnet, you can use the magnet to hold the nut and prevent it from falling into the bodywork. Once the nut is loose, you can pull the bolt out and do this with the 4 remaining bolts as well. Once we've removed the last bolt, we're ready to remove the rear fender from the bike. Underneath the back here, you'll find a small plastic tab. You need to flex this upwards in order to be able to remove the rear fender. Once you've got it unclipped, the rear fender pulls away along with the wiring. With the stock fender removed, we need to remove these 2 indicators to fit to the Fender Eliminator. This top cap needs to come off, and we do that by removing the 3 screws shown here. We remove those using the 5mm Allen key. We can now turn this cap over and upside down, which will give us access to the 2 8mm bolts holding on the indicators. We use a spanner to crack these loose and remove the bolts. With the bolt removed, we now need to remove the keeper plate that holds in the indicator. Using the flat blade screwdriver, we can pry it out the side. Once that plate's come out, you'll see that the indicator comes loose. All that remains is to feed through the wiring for the indicator so we can remove it from the assembly. To do this, just spread the 2 parts of the main fender apart so that we can get the wire to come through. With the wiring pulled out and the indicator completely removed, we also need to remove this rubber grommet. We'll need that to fit the indicators to the Fender Eliminator. And of course, we repeat this process with the indicator on the other side. Before fitting the indicators to the Fender Eliminator, we need to fit the 2 supplied spacers to the rubber grommets. The important things to pay attention to here are the orientation of the spacer compared to the body of the grommet and to make sure they're slid all the way back. Take your time with this as it can be slightly fiddly. Next we fit the grommets and spacers to the indicator mounts. Paying attention to this notch in the grommet and making sure it's facing downwards. Start with one side of the rebate and work your way around the mount slowly. A small flat blade screwdriver can be used to help encourage the rubber through the mount. Again, this is a fiddly job, so take your time. We can now feed the wiring from the indicator through the larger hole at the back of the grommet, pulling it all the way through until the indicator meets up to the grommet. Reinstall the original keeper plate, making sure that it goes all the way home. Finally, we return the 8mm bolt to hold the whole assembly in place. We do the bolt up with our 8mm spanner. The same process is repeated for the other indicator. Before we continue, we're going to tidy up some of this wiring. Uncoil the LED bolt wire and feed it along with the indicator wires through the large square hole in the fender eliminator. You should find a cable tie pre-fitted, which we can do up around these wires to keep them all neat and tidy. Once the cable tie is done up, we can use our side cutters to cut off the excess. Before we continue, we're going to fit the OEM plug to the LED number plate light. Take the OEM plug and cut it 4 to 5 centimeters from the end of the plug. We have another short video, which we'll link in the top corner here, showing the process in detail. When you fit the OEM plug, you need to match the red wire to the brown wire and the black wire to the green wire. The last stage before fitting the fender eliminator to the bike is to fit the base plate to the fender eliminator itself. We're going to use the 3 bolts that were supplied in the kit and feed them up from underneath the fender eliminator. Align the 2 parts using the corresponding bolt holes on each part. And use the nylock nuts to hold the parts together. At this stage, we're just doing the nuts up finger tight. With that, the fender eliminator assembly is ready to fit to the bike. Fit the fender eliminator by feeding the wiring up from underneath and sliding the fender eliminator up and forwards until the fender eliminator holes match the original mounting holes. This will be a firm fit. Once the mounting holes match up, we can refit the original bolts. Refit all 4 original bolts along with their corresponding nuts prior to doing them up. This is where the telescopic magnet really comes in handy. Once all 4 bolts are in, you can do them up using your 8 and 10mm spanners. Using our 4mm Allen key and a 10mm spanner, we're going to do up the 3 bolts holding the fender eliminator and the base plate together, ensuring we're happy with the alignment of the parts from the rear as we do so. With the fender eliminator fitted, we can reconnect the wiring to the bike, ensuring that we get the correct plugs in the correct sockets, and making sure they're latched and secure. Before continuing, turn on your bike's ignition and just check the operation of all the lighting, including the direction of the indicators and the illumination of the number plate. Next, we can return the junction box to its original position under the seat latch Coil up the remaining wiring so it sits neatly beneath the pillion seat and use the supplied cable tie to keep it in place. All that remains is to replace the original toolkit, refit the rider's seat and fit your number plate. After a few rides, be sure to check all the nuts and bolts and ensure they're still tight. We hope you've enjoyed this video and it's helped get the product fitted. If you haven't yet purchased this product and you'd like to, you can do so at mustardbikes.com. And of course, don't forget to hit us up on our socials, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. Like this video and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.